Today we're going to be showing you how to make pistachio macaroons. Before we get started, go ahead and gather up your ingredients and make sure you grab your equipment and supplies. If you have a food saver, you can use that to seal your pastry bags. Before you get started, make sure your equipment's in good shape. Keep your SOP or recipe nearby, either on a tablet or a printed copy. Alright, so one thing you're going to probably run into is when you take your parchment paper, it's just going to want to roll back up on you. So no matter how many times you try to flatten it out, you're just going to be frustrated. Doesn't matter which way you do it, it's going to end up a mess. So if you take it, fold over just a little bit, do the same thing on the other side. And it's not going to be perfect, but you're going to have a nice flat sheet of paper. Alright, so the first thing we're going to be doing today is making sure that we mix up our pistachios with our almond flour and our powdered sugar. So we're just going to go ahead and take all these guys and toss them into the blender here. You can use a food processor if you do have that, but I don't, so I'm using this. It does work pretty well, but you won't get all that stuff ground down, but we're going to go ahead and sift that after this to make sure that we get it all out. Alright, once you've got your flour all ground up, then the next thing you got to do is go ahead and sift it so that you don't have any big chunks. The reason that is because big chunks can lead to cracks in your shells, so it will make a lot of work turn into a lot of disappointment. So this is probably the longest part of the process because you've got to take the whisk and essentially work all of that flour, all those ground up pistachios, everything else, all through that whisk. Or not whisk, but strainer. And you're going to notice that you're going to have a lot of chunks left over once you get done. We'll show you how to handle those in just a minute. So you can really smell the pistachios coming out here too. It smells awesome. One thing to note here while we're going through this is a lot of people have those hand strainers and things like that that you just, kind of go like that with, and that doesn't work nearly as well for this particular process. Don't know why, it just takes a lot longer, it seems like, with that, and your hands are going to be really tired by the time you get done. Alright, so we talked about earlier that you're going to take some of those chunks that you might have that won't fit through that strainer, and so what we're going to do is we're going to turn on our scale, actually zero this out for our container here, and then we're going to just dump those chunks right in there and see how much they weigh. We're looking for a total of 4 ounces out of these guys for making our filling, so I'm just going to take the whisk and I'm just going to coax a little bit out of that mixture at a time up until we have just about 4 ounces. Alright, so now is the hardest part of the mixture, which is getting the egg whites right. So first thing we're going to do is add our 4 ounces of egg whites to the bowl there and lift that up. Start this thing on about 3. And this is going to be running until you get stiff peaks, which is going to take you about 3 to 4 minutes. So one thing while this is mixing that we're going to go ahead and talk about is that a lot of people recommend that you have your egg whites sit in the fridge overnight or sit out to room temperature on counters. And it does not make a difference to anything that I've ever made with them. They claim that it makes a little bit faster width of your meringue. It makes no difference to me, and you can just crack them right out of your fridge and just pour them right in here. Alright, so you can start to see a little bit what we're expecting here. If you can see there, we're getting a little bit of the meringue out of this. Starting to get a little bit of foam in the eggs. Alright, now we're starting to get a little bit more of a whip out of those eggs, and they're starting to actually turn into what we're looking for. Still not ready to add this yet. We're going to wait until that gets to soft peaks, so it should be not quite where you can actually start to really see the curling peaks or the stiff peaks, but you should be able to at least see a little bit of the ripples from your mixer as it's going through. It'll take you about 5 minutes to get there. Alright, and now this is pretty much ready to go, so we're going to just add all that at once. And we're going to go ahead and push that speed up to about a 7. Alright, now that the powdered sugar and the eggs are a little bit better blended together, we're going to go ahead and start turning this up just a couple more notches. And run this about 3 more minutes. We're still not quite at stiff peaks yet, and this has to be at fully stiff peaks before you really get this right. So we're about halfway there, and this is one of the things that people often get in a rush with, and they'll skip a lot of this and they'll just get it where they think that they're almost there, but you really want that so that it's as stiff peaks as you can get, which means that it's basically going to almost completely stick to that beater when it comes out. Alright, and that's pretty much what we're looking for. So when you lower your mixer, you have not a whole lot stick, but you should have a good amount stick behind, and you should have a nice stiff peak. Alright, so now once you've got it to the right consistency, we're going to go ahead and add our dyes in. So we're going to raise this bowl back up, crank it back up to 10. We're going to add 5 drops of the green. And we're going to add 4 drops of the teal. Now you'll be a little bit alarmed when you look at this because this is going to be almost blue. But remember that when it goes into the oven, it's going to turn into a lot lighter color because of that cooking temperature. And especially when you're using gel-based dyes, this happens a lot more. And after about a minute, you've got exactly what you're looking for your consistency and for your color. So this is the next hardest step, which is going to actually be combining our wet ingredients with our dry ingredients, which is what the French call macaronage. And I'm probably mispronouncing that and sounding like an idiot. So we're just going to, a lot of people say dump in half of this and dump the other half in later. That makes me overmix it, so I'm just going to dump it all in at once. And there we go. And you're just going to keep folding this in and kind of press it against the sides of the bowl each time that you fold it. So this helps to incorporate those dry ingredients into those wet ingredients a little bit better. Helps to remove a little bit of the air that you pumped into that mixture. So you're going to have a little bit better texture once you're done here. So this is, again, the step that I screwed up the most when I was first learning how to make these. You're going to, once you have these all mixed together, there's a lot of tutorials that tell you just stop mixing. But in reality, it doesn't quite work that way. So a lot of people get to this stage and they're like, all right, they're combined. They look great. But if it's still plopping off your spatula, you still aren't done. So, all right, now we're pretty much getting close. But if I stopped right now, these are going to look, instead of looking like macaroons, they're going to have kind of a puffed texture to them. They're almost going to look like a cream puff instead of a macaroon. So if you look at this, this is kind of starting to plop off in big chunks. We're almost there, but not quite. So I want to do that check every 3 to 5 times that I stir this because this is a really sensitive part. So as you can see, it's starting to flow a little bit better now. But we're not quite there. So 1, 2, 3, and test it one more time. And we're almost there. I think one more mix. 1, 2, 3. All right, and that is pretty much exactly what we're looking for. It's supposed to flow off in a thick ribbon like that. So if you keep mixing this, you're also going to end up with something that's going to be really runny. And I'm not going to keep mixing this because of that. But once you have it there, you're just going to go ahead and pop it into this piping bag. Now, if you're not going to use a food saver for this step, you can still use a rubber band and either a regular real piping bag, or you can honestly just use a Ziploc bag. But you might make a little bit of a mess with both of those ways. The reason I use the food saver is because you can actually seal this bag and make a lot less of a mess and get more with just one, so you don't have to switch hands while you're piping your macaroons out, which is again another frustrating step if you're not careful. Alright, so once we've got that bag filled up, we're going to go ahead and fill it up with the food saver. So pull it right off of that. Lay that across that. Close it up and seal it. And in about 10 seconds, you've got your bag ready to go. So there you go. Ready to pipe all these things out. As you can see, we've got our baking sheets laid out with our parchment paper on them, and we're about ready to start this. You can use a piping tip if you want to. It's really just one extra thing to clean if you're going to do it this way, and you're just looking for a circle. It's not going to be fancy, so we're going to just go ahead and cut the tip just about 1/4 inch wide. Then just go ahead and turn it upside down and start piping away. So you want it to end up about a quarter-sized dollop, and once you're done, that'll pool into about a silver dollar. Oh, and I was making a mess here. You don't want them too close together because they can run into each other. And of course, it doesn't make them look very pretty. As you can see, I made a little bit of a mess, and I went ahead and ran these. So go ahead and slap them down real good, and you can go ahead and see the little air bubbles popping at the top there. And that makes it so that you don't have a bunch of cracks in your shells. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and take our piping bag, get that set up for once we get our filling prepared here. And we're just going to take our butter, toss that into our mix here, take the 4 ounces of dry mix that we set aside earlier, along with our little bit bigger chunks that didn't fall through the sifter, and we're just going to turn those into a little bit of a paste here. And once they start to get a little bit more combined, we're going to go ahead and add that vanilla and a little bit of salt. And then you are ready to pop that in your piping bag. And since we're using such little amount with this, I'm not going to go ahead and seal it like I did earlier, because you can go ahead and handle that pretty well. Now once they all come out of the oven and cool off, you're ready to pipe them. Alright, so one of the most important things about this is going to be your drying. And if you don't dry your shells, they are not going to actually get the feet, which is the nice little kind of foamy looking thing at the bottom that makes them a macaroon. So if they aren't you can kind of see this eggshell kind of shimmer to them instead of the glossiness like when you really first poured them. And if you touch them, your fingers should come out dry. Alright, now that they've passed our drying test and the oven's preheated, these guys are ready to go in there. And we are going to set our timer for exactly 11 minutes. As you're watching our time lapse here, you can watch the feet form on the macaroons as they bake. Alright, so once all of your shells are nice and cooled, you're going to go ahead and want to pair them up by their sizes. And I just put one on top of the other so I know, I'm only going to pipe one half. I'm not going to accidentally double pipe it or anything. Just stack these all together here. Oops, that was a little sticky, a little underdone perhaps. There's one way to screw them up. Alright, so remember that once you pipe these out, that they're going to squish a little bit towards the edges, so don't pipe all the way to the edge, otherwise you'll make a mess once you actually bite into it. So, again, you can use a tip if you want to, or you can just cut the tip of your piping bag off, and then you're just going to go ahead and squeeze on down. So one thing is, while you're putting these things together, make sure that you have a little bit of kind of twisting motion, and only keep your fingers on the edges of them. If you push in the middle of these shells, they're going to crack, and again, you're going to ruin a couple hours worth of work. So if you put the right amount on there, you should just see your filling coming through the edges. If you'd like help creating training videos like this for your company, give us a call or email us today. Subscribe to our channel for more. Thanks for watching.